See if this is gonna work. All right, let's see. CB. All right, so right now we're live. Okay, if you can hear me, give me a thumbs up. I got this mic on, if you would. This is gonna be more for, I get a lot of video requests for younger folks, and so this could be more for them, maybe not, I don't know. But just got done with the front yard mowing. I figured I'd take some time just to catch my breath and mow a little bit on the backyard here. And then I put my pole on. I don't normally mow with a pole on, but I figured, hey, if I want to, yeah, right on. Sweet, thank you, sir. Let me just move this down a little bit, and hopefully the Verizon thing will keep in there. All right, so I get a lot of requests for, for younger people in their 20s and 30s and whatnot. And my first book I'd written on that for them, which I didn't title very well. Maybe one of these days I'll retitle it. But I just want to share with this a couple of things, what I would have done differently in hindsight. And I'm in pretty good shape. I could not be happier with my life as we sit here today. And all the mistakes you make, you look back and you say, man, that sucked, but it put me in the place I am today. So it was worth it for sure. But you still look back and say, oh, I could have done something differently, maybe to take off some stress and whatnot. The number one financial thing I wish I would have done or thought about differently was not be so quick to buy a house. I got a nice house now. I'm looking at it and I'm back right now. I got an acre, about 1.25 acre here. Got some woodland behind me, which will never be developed, which is pretty nice. We're on a cul-de-sac. Got Gary Rosington, if y'all know him, he's a guitarist from Lynyrd Skynyrd, and he owns the property back there, which unless he gets desperate for money, it'll never be sold and never be developed, which is pretty sweet. But I'm 48 years old. It's not like I'm a spring chicken, and it took a long time to get here, and a lot of frustration, a lot of challenges for sure. And thankfully I have a good wife who comes from a background similar to mine, so she's familiar with not having everything given to her for sure. She had 8 brothers and sisters. Her dad died early, her mom was sick young, so we both come from a relatively limited background, which is nice. But if she were not, or if I were not used to being on the down and out, so to speak, this would have been a tough relationship to maintain for sure. But when you buy a house, you're taking on a risk of just substantial proportions. I'm just telling you right now, and you don't need to do it. It's like this American dream concept that we have. We got to buy a house because we're going to build all this equity. We're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I'm just telling you, man, this is my previous Josh. If I could look back in hindsight, I say, don't be so fast to buy a house, because you're rhetorical, is that right one? Rhetorical. You're locking yourself in to a debt payment that you may or may not in the future have the ability to afford. So let me give you an example I'm going through right now. So, we were able to buy this house. My grandma died, so we inherited a little bit of money, which is, fantastic to put down on this thing. And, I still had a VA loan I could have used, but this house was, if you look at the VA loans, there's a certain threshold they give you, then you got to come up with cash on top of that. So my grandma dying and leaving some money was nice. I mean, didn't make us rich, but it allowed us to pay the VA, to have the VA loan and be able to pay the down payment on the home. And we were making pretty good money back then. But then, things happen. The corporations change. Things happen at work. For me, it was commute. I couldn't take it anymore. I was sitting there, leaving at 6 in the morning, getting home at 7 at night, and just not a happy camper. And I said, I'm not doing this anymore. And then, so you get caught up in what you can afford today. But the issue is, can you afford it in the future? I'm telling you. See, that's the thing I think a lot of people forget. You might be able to afford it today, Josh, but what happens a year, 2, 3 years from now? Are you going to be able to afford it in the future? I mean, this isn't even 2008 we're talking about. So if you're in real estate in 2005, 6, man, you're freaking happy as a clam. But what happens in 2006? The rug is pulled out from you, because you're good to go today financially, but in the future, you don't know. And so this is the problem with American consumerism. Look, I'm just as big as the falls, probably half more so than most of you on YouTube. I freaking spend what I can today. And what happens is when you live like that, you're assuming when you take on a debt that your ability to afford something today will continue on in the future. And that's not going to be the case. It might be, but it might not be. And if it's not the case, what happens to you then? So I'm going to share this example with you, and I think I've shared before. When I first started USA, I'll never forget, I had a lady call me, and her mom had just died. This is like right in 2008. And so if you recall correctly, the real estate market was going gangbusters. I remember living through like crazy, and people are there, I talk about this all the time, ninja loans, no income, no jobs or assets. So basically, if you could fog a mirror, you're getting debt. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. It was insane. Everybody knew it was insane. Everyone knew it was, but no one, it's like, it's what's called game theory. If I don't do it, someone else is going to do it, and that someone else is going to profit, so I better do it. That's what game theory is in economics, in case you're wondering. You have two options, don't do it or do it. If you don't do it, then someone else might do it, which means you'll be left behind, so you better do it because that other person might do it. That's game theory for economic theory. And there's a lot of validity to that. But anyway, so this lady had taken a lot of debt. She's a big, highfalutin attorney in South Florida, Miami area. And she took on all this debt for these condos, you know, hoity-toity, highfalutin condos in Miami. I don't know anything about Miami real estate market. And she was making big bucks as an attorney. This is the mom of the lady who called me, not the lady who called me, the mom. Then she had a heart attack and died. And so her mom had so there's no income coming in. It was all gone. It stopped because she was dead. When you die, you don't work for an income anymore. And so the lady calls me, was like, what do I do with my mom's property? They're all upside down. She has, you know, $200,000. That condo was only worth $75,000, this, that, and the other. And there's nothing she could do, just walk away from it. Thank the good Lord she did not co-sign for these properties. And I'll do another video on not co-signing for a property, even if it's for your folks or certainly for your kids. But in this case, she did. So she could walk away from it. The bank had to foreclose on them. And, you know, sorry, bank, well, we bailed you out anyways. Too bad, so sad. But that's exactly the kind of scenario that happens all the time. But it's not just in a crisis. It can be that your company closes up shop and moves their operations from Connecticut down to, where's the down to Houston or something like that. Or there's one company in Connecticut, insurance company, I could have sworn moved from Hartford to Boston. And what happens then? What happens? You're going to move to Boston? Well, okay, to keep your job. What happens if you can't sell your house? And see, and that's the thing. When you buy a house, you're locking in the idea that that will be your residence for the next few years. And what happens if it's not? What happens if you have no equity in there? What happens if anything happens? And I'm not even trying to be like crazy old Susie Orman here, which says your house could get, you know, lost in a flood. That's silly. But at the end of the day, you could easily lose your job. You could easily get disenchanted with your job. Anything can happen. And when that happens, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You can't pick up stakes and leave. So when we lived in Phoenix, we had we rented some crappy little apartment to get the lay of the land, and that was good. And so that was a good thing because I had to know it was depressing. I was working, raising money for a political party, just calling people on the phone and stuff. And I was making like $8 an hour or something like that. My wife was working some crappy little job, but we're just renting a place, just getting a lay of the land. I think my wife was working 2 jobs, if I recall right. I think I was working 2 jobs. Anyway, either way, we were young, we were stupid, and we didn't have any money. But we were still, you know, we were renting, so it didn't matter. Some crappy little apartment. All right, so then I got a full-time job. She got a full-time job, so we started having a little bit of money. We said, let's go buy a house because that's what you're supposed to do. And I'm just telling you, it worked out, but man. So we were now stuck in that property for as long as we could afford it. Now, we did end up selling it when we had our first child because we thought we were going to move back to Virginia. And we caught a break there because if we would have waited 2 more years, we would never be able to sell it. Never. Because the market in Phoenix went like this. We bought it for $99,000, went up to, I think we sold it for $125,000, and it went up to $241,000 like in 2003 or something like that. And then it fell to where I think they sold it for $75,000 at foreclosure in 2009. And so if we would have stayed for 2 more years, we would have stunk, and we would not have been able to move back to Virginia to be there for my wife's mom when she got ill. And that would have been bad because then we've been stuck in Phoenix. Well, her mom's back in Virginia, simply because we have some crappy old house that we bought for $99,000 that we thought would be the place we'd raise our family. And it just didn't work out like that. In fact, when we had our first child, we were gone from that house anyway because we're in the process of moving back to Virginia. Now, I write about that in my book, Strategic Money Planning, what happened with us in that regard. So now we're sitting in Phoenix. We have some rental property, not a rental property, just some crappy little rental house. And there's some bad things about that. The landlord is an idiot and whatnot. And then we said, okay, we're going to move back to Virginia. We're going to look at a house sight unseen. And we asked one of my wife's sisters to go check out this house in Western Virginia, not West Virginia, but Western Virginia that we saw online. And, you know, thankfully, cooler heads prevailed. We said, yeah, let's wait till we get out there and again, rent and get a lay of the land like we did in Phoenix. And we did that, and it worked out great. So we rented a place. We had a child. We had another child, and my wife was working. I was working. And things were going good. We bought a house in a place called Dayton, Virginia, which is a nice little town. It's beautiful. I mean, it's not much going on there, but it's fantastic, absolutely. The house was, I think we bought for $98,000 or something like that. And so we buy this house, and all is good. I'm just telling you right now, all was good. But then I changed jobs, and my new job I went into, man, it was like freaking rock climbing. It was nothing but risk, and I mean, lots of upside, but a huge downside risk. Whew, and it was tight, young Josh. I'm talking to young Josh here. It was tight, man, and we were having a hard time getting by to the point where, you know, it was bad. And then my wife got pregnant. I don't know how that happens, but somehow she got pregnant 2 straight times in 2007. And then again, we have Irish twins, and it was tough. One income, and the money was falling off a cliff. And again, we had this house, and that was in 2007 when the market's clashing and cascading downwards. And now, thankfully, I was able to land a job where they would buy our house out from under us, regardless of what we could get for selling price, which was good because we owed more than we could have got for it. Because by that time, we had borrowed 100% of what's called loan to value. You can't do that anymore, but we did. And you know, thankfully, USA at that point wanted me so badly for some ungodly reason that they were able to, they were going to buy my house from me, even though we were upside down on it. Whew, and that saved us. But I mean, I'm telling you, you know, these are things I look back on. I say, we didn't have to buy that house. We could have rented something. And what happened when we rented, like the place in Phoenix when we rented on McClellan Ave in downtown, not downtown Phoenix, but basically in the inner part of Phoenix. If you know Phoenix, though, you get 7th Street, and then you got, I think it's Central Ave, I can't remember, but 7th Street, and then you got something, and then 7th Ave. And that area starts getting worse from the 7th Street going to the east side. The avenues is when it starts getting bad. And so the avenue starts encroaching on the nice side. And 7th Street wasn't nice, but it starts getting better and better and better as you go towards Scottsdale. And so what happens if you're in one of these areas on the street side of the corridor there, I think it's Central, I forgot what that road is, that starts encroaching on you because the schools are better and whatnot. When that happens, and if you have 100% loan to value and you're trying to move out to go to better schools, you're good luck selling your house. It's not going to happen. And so I would just say to young Josh, the likelihood of you staying in one community, in one area in this day and age, especially if you don't have children, is becoming more and more remote. And if you are definitely not going to stay in that same location, even of a town, I'm just telling you right now, don't buy a house. I mean, rent. It's okay to rent. And if you have no kids, frankly, I don't know why you would not buy a house or why you would buy a house. If you got no kids, man, you don't have to rent a condo, but you can find a place to rent where you can have your garden if you want. Smelling the tea olives. Oh, man. Oh man, tea olive trees, I gotta put a whole bunch on the ground over there and they're starting to sprout. Oh man, it's just beautiful. But you can get a house where you can rent and get this smell of tea olives. You can have your little garden. You can put some mulberry trees back here. I got a couple apple trees that are growing. You know, they're not sprouting yet, but hopefully 2 years. But if you're not gonna be there for a long time, and I'd say 5 to 7 years, man, rent. I'm just telling you, rent the place before you buy. If you buy, you are destined to plant your flag in that ground come hell or high water. And it's just not worth it. I know everyone has a different story. I get that, but man, it's just not worth it. I'm just telling you, rent as opposed to buy. You don't need to buy just because everyone says you should buy to build equity in your house or do this or that other so you can establish how you want your backyard to be. Not if you don't have kids in particular, but even then, like even before you get them to school. I mean, so you got, you know, from 0 to 5, it's 5 years before they go to kindergarten. And then lastly, I just want to say a lot of people buy a house under the auspices, oh, I got to get in the best school district because the great school districts are so good. Man, don't fall for that trap. You know how they figure out great schools? They test kids. They literally give them tests. So kid, can you pass a test with shining colors? Yes, then you have a great school. Kid, you can't pass a test with shining colors, then you don't have a great school. Man, no, that's not how schools should be graded. No, it's crazy. And I don't have the answer for that, but what happens if you have, for just a couple years, you have a bunch of kids with dyslexia, or a bunch of kids from single parent families, or a bunch of immigrant kids where English is a second language? Is your school not great now because they don't test well? It's crazy, but yet the school's numbers are going to fall off a cliff. And if they fall off a cliff, anyway. All right, so that's all I want to say here today. I want to say, young Josh, don't be so quick on buying a house. You might find a property you want. You might find a property that looks good, and you can just smell the tea oil, say, this is the place where I want to raise my family. Think long and hard. Is that really going to be the place where you raise your family? Really? If it's not, just don't buy it. Rent is just fine. Rent a condo, rent a ranch house. There's nothing wrong with renting a ranch house. A 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,300 square foot ranch. Nothing wrong with that. Hell, when Charlotte and I were first getting out, we had that place in Phoenix. I think it was like a 1 bedroom and a front room. That was it, with a tiny little kitchen. I forgot what it was called. I don't know, a loft or something like that. It was like 1 bedroom. We had a futon as our major piece of furniture, and we got by just fine. There's no big deal. No one cares. But man, we were able to get the hell out of Dodge when the situation dictates. And so that's what you got to learn. And I'm going to do a couple of these videos too, because I think it's important. As my oldest is getting, in the middle of her freshman year of college, I got 3 coming up behind her. And I know I get a lot of requests like, hey, can you do something more for younger folks? Well, that'd be my number one. Don't be so quick on buying a house. All right, hey, thanks for coming on board, guys. By all means, put comments down there if you have any questions or comments. Man, I'd love to hear them. See you later. Hey, have a good weekend. It's just beautiful outside. We'll see you now. I gotta turn this guy off. Oops, right there.